Promote a culture of inclusion, supercharge your communication, and unleash the full potential of your teams and leaders with the Inclusive Handbook collection from the Diversity Movement. As part of the collection, I wrote the Inclusive Leadership Handbook with Kurt Merriweather to empower leaders with tools needed to cultivate a culture that fosters creativity, innovation, and employee engagement. Through strategies, exercises, and self-reflection, leaders at all levels can enhance their effectiveness. Learn more at thediversitymovement.com/store. Use code HOL at checkout for 25% of your first order. Welcome to High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. This season, we're diving deeper with more solo episodes, where I'll share the experiences that have led to recognition by EY, Forbes, Fast Company, and others. Not as a boast, but as milestones on my entrepreneurial path. From growing multi-million-dollar firms to successful business exits and building high-performance teams with a global perspective. I'll reveal the insights and strategies from my journey and share them with you so that we can win together. Alongside these solo episodes, we'll have industry visionaries and thought leaders, and we'll explore effective leadership. Ready to empower your leadership journey with real success stories? Let's embark on this transformational journey together. Hello, and welcome to another edition of High Octane Leadership with your host, Donald Thompson. I'm here today with Paula Jackler. Paula, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
One of the things that, Paula, I'm going to give you space to just introduce yourself. We're going to talk about your background. We're going to talk about Ozzie, your new startup, and all the different things. But what I wanted to do in your voice is just tell the audience a little bit about your career arc. You're not natively born in America. What country did you come from? How many languages you speak? Brothers, sisters, anything about you that would allow the audience to get to know you a little bit better.
Yes. So I am from Brazil. I grew up in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in the late 80s, which was honestly a great time, right? I am the youngest of two daughters, and my parents are still married. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary in 2 months. So we grew up in this really close community about 40 kilometers outside of the beach. So I'm very much a beach person. And back in 2010, I told my parents, listen, you know that here in Brazil, for me to have a successful career, I have to speak English fluently. So they had been paying for English classes for about 7 years. And they're like, well, you already speak English. I was like, well, not quite. So let me do this. Let me go to the United States for a year, learn English, and then I'll come back. So in 2010, I arrived in New York City. And the moment I stepped foot in Manhattan, I was just like, I am never leaving.
That's awesome.
I loved New York City instantly. It was love at first sight. But I moved here as an au pair, which is a study abroad program where you can go to school and take care of kids at the same time and live with a host family. So I did that for about 2 years. But like I said, I fell in love with New York City. And after my study abroad program was over, I had to figure out how to actually live my life in the US and have my own American dream. So I changed my visa and I went to school first to get an associate's degree and then to get my master's degree. I got an MBA. And since then, I have been working for startups in New York City and also Silicon Valley. I started in the health and wellness industry, and now I've been working in the fintech industry for the past maybe 3 to 4 years. So in a nutshell, that's it. I know we have so much more to talk about this journey of being an immigrant here in the US, but in a nutshell, that's it.
That is awesome. And I really appreciate that backdrop. And one of the things that in us getting to know one another and partnering together on some things, I've seen and heard all the different things you've done in marketing. And so now let's transition that to being a startup founder and entrepreneurship. Tell the audience a little bit about Ozzie and why this financial wellness solution, right, is applicable, why it matters in the space of all the different tools and companies that are out there.
Exactly. So, before I explain to the audience what Ozzie is and what I'm building, let me do a deeper dive on my journey here in the US. As I said, I applied to business school. I got accepted, but on a student visa, I did not qualify for any type of student loans, scholarships, or any type of financial assistance, right? And my parents, they didn't have and still don't have the financial means to support my education. So back in Brazil, I had scholarships to pay for my bachelor and my master's in Brazil. But here, I couldn't rely on literally anything, right? So I had to work really, really hard. At some point, I remember I had two internships plus a graduate research assistantship position at the university. And I was babysitting for five families just so I could pay for my master's degree. And I still graduated with $35,000 in credit card debt. That is where the idea for Ozzie started forming, right? Because it wasn't, a lot of people think that debt is because people are reckless or because they're not paying attention to your finances, but sometimes it's just because you don't know better. And sometimes it's because your circumstances put you in a situation where you literally don't have enough money to pay for your bills, right? So after I graduated and I was trying to pay off that debt, I didn't know how to manage my finances. And I had to figure it out on my own. Reading books, watching videos, being part of Facebook communities. But something very interesting happened. My now husband, then boyfriend, and I had very different ways to look at our debt. So I wanted to pay it off right away. And do like the snowball method. And I didn't want to spend any money on anything until we were out of debt. And my husband was just like, no, we should be paying like the higher interest first. And it's okay if we have pizza twice a week. If it takes us like twice as long to pay off our debt, it's fine. So that's where the idea for Ozzie came about. When I realized that money is more than just math, there is an emotional component to money as well. And if people want to actually get a grip on their finances, they have to understand their relationship with money. So I ended up creating Ozzie. It's an AI financial assistant that delivers hyper personalized financial plans by combining psychology with machine learning. So basically, I spent 2.5 years researching financial psychology and the emotional side of money. And I developed a proprietary model that categorizes people into different money personality types. And then what Ozzie does, it gives you personalized answers and plans based on your money personality type, meaning the way you see money, the way you think about money, your values, your beliefs. So, what Ozzie's here to do, like most people don't talk to financial advisors anyway, right? Ozzie is supposed to be a financial advisor plus a financial coach at your fingertips that is helping you not only based on your financial situation, but also based on how you really see and think about money.
That is powerful. And I love the way that you introduced it in terms of people that have a lot of debt. It's not because of any specific reason. Sometimes people don't have another way except to go into debt to survive until they can figure out that path forward. And then the other piece that you described, and this is a lot for our listeners that will be applicable, most people don't have financial advisors when you need them, right? When you're financially secure, you've sold your first company, you're making $300,000 a year. Well, okay, but what about when we just graduate from college, just trying to figure it out? They don't teach financial money management in school, right? They don't make that a critical priority. And so we kind of fall prey for all the credit card ads at high interest rate when you're in school, right? Buy now, no interest for a year. And all of that stuff sounds enticing because nobody's teaching us the downstream ramifications of those choices. Let me ask you this. Do you find, you talked about the psychology. So I'm interested in that in the 2 years of research. What did that net you, right? So research for research's sake, okay. But what did that end up with, right? In terms of how you look at adding psychology to this tool?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the way that I started the research, I have a background in psychology. I know we didn't touch upon that, but my previous life in Brazil, I actually worked for 5 years as a psychology professional. And the way that I was trained in university in Brazil is to be very research and data oriented. So automatically, when I started looking at those things and thinking about this, I was just like, okay, the first thing that I have to do is actually look at research. Is this a common phenomenon that other people are researching or they're interested in? And what I found out is that, yes, there is a body of research in psychology that it's called financial psychology or money attitudes that people are actually looking into. So once I started, I pretty much did at first what we call a meta review. So I looked at every single academic paper that had been published on the topic to start realizing, okay, to start understanding what are the patterns that we have. Once I was able to understand that, yes, there is definitely a pattern, right? And that is what we call the symbolic meanings of money. So one of the misconceptions that we have is that money is just money, right? Like a dollar is a dollar. And then if even if we're converting currency, right, like a dollar is like 6 Brazilian reais. But the truth is that there are symbolic meanings of money. So people might see money as love, people might see money as freedom, as security, as planning. There are many, many different things. And the way that people end up deriving those symbolic meanings of money is pretty much based on their childhood. So the way that they see their caregivers managing money, the way that they see their communities teaching them about money, right? Like teachers and religious leaders and all of that. Also, location, right? Like somebody, I was born in Brazil in the 80s. Somebody and my husband was born in the US in the 80s. Even the location also has an impact into all of that. So when you combine everything, your generational cohort, the location where you were born, the community teachings that you were taught, plus what you saw your caregivers doing, you also start developing your own symbolic meaning of money. And each symbolic meaning of money is translated in specific behaviors, right? So let's say if after a very stressful day, you go on Amazon and you start shopping, you might not even realize that that's why you're doing that. You're looking for comfort, right? And then we see a lot of problems between couples, for example, because if you have a husband that has one money personality type and he see his wife just spending a lot of money on Amazon, now they're having conflicts because sometimes they lack the language to have the conversation, right? They can't see that, okay, my husband wants me to save money because he sees money as security, but I am spending money on Amazon because I see money as love and I'm just loving myself and treating myself.
And the wife to the husband is, don't you love me? You want me to be happy.
Exactly.
And that's a real thing. The impact on the way we language and communicate, because if we don't understand the symbols of our partner, the symbols for ourselves, even before we get into the relationship, now all of a sudden the behaviors are not thoughtful. They're reactionary. They're response driven. And it's tough in any field of endeavor, right? Business, finance, relationships, coaching, sports. you have to be thoughtful and intentional about behaviors to get a desired result, right? Otherwise, you're kind of the ping pong ball being manipulated by the marketers. And so I think that's I'm tracking with you, right? And
Exactly.
appreciate that very much.
That's exactly it, right? And that is what we are trying to do with Ozzie is really tell people, hey, there's no right or wrong about how you perceive money and how you see money, right? Obviously, there are better ways to manage your finances. It's not because you're loving yourself that you're going to spend more than what you make, right? We're not giving people just like a wide pass to just like be bad at managing their finances. It's the opposite. It's just saying there isn't a money personality type that it's better than the other, right? It's just like regular personality types, right? Being an extrovert is not better than being an introvert. The same thing applies to your money personality type, right? If you see money as security, that's not better than seeing money as, let's say, status, for example, right? The important thing is for you to recognize, okay, what is my money personality type? What are my strengths? What are the areas that I have to improve? And how does that impact my the way that I manage my money, the way that I manage the relationships with the people around me, right? And also what I want from the future. So what we're doing with Ozzie is instead of you having to figure all of those things out on your own, we created Ozzie the Money Bot that it's pretty much you just ask questions and then you get answers based on your financial goals, your money personality type, and your financial situation, right? So even if you and I'm pretty sure you and I have the same money personality type. We see money as security. But even if we go on Ozzie right now and we ask a question, most likely we would get different answers because we're at different life stages, right? So that's pretty much what we're trying to do and kind of like give people permission to admit that managing money is hard, right? It's hard. It's hard. And I know we joke about it, right? Like most people are kind of like, oh, I'm so bad at managing my finances. But I also think people are using humor to cope with something that it's really hard for them, right? There's some research that says that people are more comfortable disclosing how many sexual partners they've had throughout their lifetime than disclosing how much money they make and how much debt they're in. Like if we let that sink for a minute, there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes with managing our finances.
Those are powerful points. And I think that the more we have tools that can support us is good. But a lot of the tools out there aren't connected to who I am as an individual. And that's what I feel like Ozzie is doing, right? By taking into consideration my generation, my location, my job type, my goals. Now you can give me back more specific, useful insight versus just generic insight of how do I save for my first house blanket, right? Which you can get off of the internet. How do people interact with Ozzie, right? So this is an early stage firm. And so tell me a little bit about how our audience would react. How could I find out my money personality, right? Even before the product is fully launched or anything like that. How could I get involved to learn more while you grow more?
Yeah, so you can go on our website. It's aussieapp.com. The quiz is available, so you can find your money personality type right away. And once you complete the quiz, I also send an email with a more detailed version of your money personality type, just so you have that at your fingertips. What I have been encouraging people to do after they take the money personality type, like if you are in a relationship with a significant other, have that person also take the money personality type, just so you know their own patterns when it comes to money, right? I'm also doing that with younger people. Have your parents take their the money personality type quiz, so you can start seeing like, oh, that's why I do certain things, right? So, and that's how people can get involved. And everybody that takes the money personality type quiz now, they're automatically enrolled in a wait list for our beta that should be out in a few months. So what we're doing, we're not going to do a wide launch for everybody, because I really want to hear and learn what people think, right? You were just mentioning that a lot of the solutions out there, they're not focusing on people, and that is true. I mean, the financial services industry, I see that day in and day out. We're trying to build Aussie in a different way, right? Like, we really want people to be able to reach out to me via email or Instagram or LinkedIn and say, like, hey, I used the app, I loved the answer that Aussie gave me. Or the opposite, like, hey, I asked this question, it's not really resonating with me, right? Because honestly, I truly believe that financial security is a human right? Like, I am building Aussie for the 99% of America, everybody out there that is struggling with debt, everybody who's struggling to communicate with their partners, everybody that comes January 1st, they're kind of like, okay, I'm going to manage my finances. And then by January 15th, they're blowing their budget again. Like, Aussie, I'm building Aussie for those people, right? In a way, like, I'm building Aussie for that 2015 version of me who was struggling big time with my student debt, right? And I know so many people right now, it's struggling to pay their student loans as well. I'm building Aussie for parents who want to, give their kids a better life and some education. So please, if you join the wait list, you can always reach out to me. I am, to the best of my knowledge, I'm the only Paula Jackler in the United States, so I'm pretty easy to find too.
That is awesome. And, as you were speaking, I got even more excited because I'm thinking about my 4 kids. At this point in my career in life, and very fortunate and have worked hard, um, I do have access to financial professionals and different folks, but my kids don't. And a lot of times kids don't want to listen to their parents, right? My Gen Z kids are all about experiences. I want to travel. I want to do this. And I want to work this kind of job so I can have more time to travel. I'm like, yeah, but what about your first house? What about so I don't want to be the bearer of bad news either. And not that Ozzy's the bearer of bad news, but the bearer of information and insight from a credible third party source. And I think as a parent, that's super important also, right? And then we can have discussions with the kids about what they're learning. And that feels like it's going to be way more fun. So that may also be a kind of a marketing insight as well. Because as I'm thinking about it, it's like, I want to talk to my kids about money, but I don't want to preach at them. And so if we all take the quiz and then just talk about it and learn each other, then we're talking about money, but we're having a good time doing it.
Exactly. And one of my goals, and it's a very ambitious one, your kids, right, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're social media natives, right? So if you go on TikTok right now, and if you search for FinTalk, for example, there are so many people out there, so many quote unquote influencers giving financial tips that are so wrong and so inaccurate and don't make sense, but those are the people that your kids are listening to, right? And most likely, if you say something, they're going to be like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. And I saw something on TikTok, and they're going to follow that, right? So, what we're trying to do with Aussie is kind of like, it's not your dad, it's not an influencer, it's actually somebody. I know it's AI, but let's position it that way. It's somebody that knows you so well, because that's the beauty of machine learning, right? The more you interact with the app, the more the app learns about you. And an influencer, they're creating content for themselves, right? Because they want the views, they want the sponsorships. That's what they want. Aussie is actually like, I want you to stay, right? Like, I want you to stay throughout your entire lifetime with us on the app, but we're actually create something that's going to know you so well that by the time you ask a question, right? Like, hey, I want to save money to travel, but my dad is also telling me I have to think about buying a down payment for a house. How do I balance the two, right? And Oz is going to be able to give you an answer for that.
That is phenomenal. I want to rewind. I tried to take a note, but I missed it. I think you said something to the effect of financial wellness is a human right. How did you?
That's my belief. That's my belief. We see what's happening in America right now, right? So as somebody who grew up in Brazil, I have a very different outlook on um, disparities and economic disparities, right? So, because, and if you take a look at when I was born as well. So, being somebody who grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, Brazil wasn't a developing country. Brazil was a third world country, right? Like, we don't say that anymore, but back when I was growing up, that's where it was, right? Like, the military dictatorship had finished in Brazil maybe 7 years, 10 years before I was born. And one thing that you can see very clearly in environments like that is economic disparity, right? Developed countries don't have a lot of disparities when it comes to economy. And what we're seeing right now in the United States, you can see that the divide between the 1% and the 99% and the 10% and the 90%, that gap is becoming wider and wider, right? And it's not a matter of people working hard. It's not a matter of people trying hard. It's not a matter of people losing faith in the American dream. It's just how economy is shaping up to be. So I truly believe that everyone in the world should have financial security. I'm not saying that everybody will be wealthy. I'm not saying that everybody will be rich, but it's absurd to me that there are people in the United States right now, and we have hard data on this, that if somebody gets hit with a $400 emergency expense, they wouldn't be able to pay their rent, Donald, right? It's 2025, and it's right now, that's a quarter of the United States. They cannot cover a $400 emergency expense, right? So how can we have a conversation about so many other topics when you have a mother or a father that they don't know that if something happens to them, they're not going to put food on their table, right? So part of what Ozzie is trying to do as well is really teaching people how to change their mindset, right? Because, okay, if you don't have enough money to cover your bills, there are certain things that we have to do, right? Like we might need to get a second job. We might need to develop financial skills. There are certain things that we're going to have to do to get you in a better place as well. But a lot of people right now don't even know that they have their options, right? So we have a whole program called 5-Minute Money Moves, where we give people interactive lessons in 5 minutes or less to help them learn about money, change their mindset about money, and they get points every time they take those lessons, and then they can redeem those points for rewards, because we truly believe that people should be rewarded for their hard work. So that's also the premise of it. Like no one, not in America or in any country in the world, should be suffering from financial insecurity. And if I can do anything to mitigate that or reduce the number of people right now who are struggling with financial security, I will work really, really hard to make that happen.
That is awesome. I love the construct of 5-minute money moves because we're in a micro learning culture. So if things aren't bite sized, they get ignored. But people will take a lot of those small snippets and over time learn a lot. And then the second thing that I'm super impressed with is not only do you have a great idea, the passion, the research, but the mission of really giving back based on your story, your experience is really, really powerful. And so I encourage all of our listeners to go to ozzieapp.com to take the money profile. Paula, before we leave our time together, how can people get in touch with you? We talked about the website, share the website again, and restate what they need to do next.
Yes. So anyone can get in touch with me. Like I said, if you search for Paula Jackler, you will find every single social media that I'm a part of. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. If you're an email person, my email address is paula@ozzieapp.com. What I would love for people to do is take the money personality quiz and then reach out to me and say, hey, this resonated with me. This did not resonate with me. And also, I would like to have more insights, like where do I go from here, right? Like, because in between you taking the money personality type and our beta being out in a few months, I want to be of service, right? So feel free to reach out, ask questions, and I will be here to support your listeners in any way that I can.
Paula, thank you so much for spending time, for your vision, for your dream. The thing that I like to share with our audience is that, one, when you're building a product, when you're building a new service, whatever your company is, what is the way you're going to give value to people? And when you create that value where somebody's going to be better off because they interacted with you, it exponentially increases your opportunity for success, because people tell other people and people use tools and products that help them become better. And Ozzie seems right in that lane, and I couldn't be more excited for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show. And honestly, thank you for everything that you do to support me. As you know, I have learned and grown so much under your mentorship. It is a blessing and a privilege that I don't take for granted.
Thank you for joining us on High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. Today's episode is a step in our collective journey towards leadership excellence. Remember, every story we share and every insight we gain is a piece in the puzzle of our leadership journey. For more insight and detail, hit the subscribe button so that we can stay connected. For deeper information and more episodes, go to donaldthompson.com. Continue to lead with vision and purpose, and until we meet again, embrace your role as a high-octane leader in the ever-evolving world of business.